There is one specific detail from this weekend's record-setting No Kings protests that you might have noticed, maybe you didn't, maybe you thought about it, maybe you didn't. It certainly eluded corporate media coverage, and I believe it's one of the most important aspects of the protests. It wasn't the chants, although many of the chants were great. It wasn't the signs, although I saw some great signs when I was out there. It wasn't the size, although the size was massive and the size really matters. It was the American flags. Let me explain. Whether it was in blue cities or red towns, on flagpoles or wrapped around shoulders or staked in the grass, there were American flags everywhere at the anti-Trump No Kings protests this weekend. And this really matters. For most of my adult life, certainly the time I've been following American politics, the American flag at protests has almost automatically meant one thing. This is a right-wing rally. MAGA hats, the military type costumes, January 6th energy. Is it a Tea Party march? Is it a Trump convoy? Whatever. You wouldn't have assumed for much of the time I've been following American politics that if you see a sea of American flags, that it's a protest against authoritarianism, against right-wingism. That is how deeply the imagery of the American flag has been hijacked by the political right. It was not an accident. They did it on purpose, okay? Republicans made this calculated bet. We're going to wrap ourselves in red, white, and blue. We're going to claim the moral high ground. We will be seen as patriotic. It'll be a visual monopoly on patriotism. And it'll be a marketing campaign for if you're not with us, you're not patriotic. Reagan launched it. Bush militarized it with the Iraq War. Trump turned it into a sort of costume fascism of sorts. And for the most part, we on the left have let him do it. We brought the pride flags, the union banners, the peace symbols, the Black Lives Matter signs, all important symbols, meaningful symbols. But we didn't really focus on the flag, almost like we gave it up. We conceded. We ceded ground on the flag. Maybe some were embarrassed by it, as if we'd kind of handed it over like, listen, fine, you get the American flag. We'll find something different. That changed on Saturday. This time, the biggest anti-Trump protest since he returned to power, the biggest anti-Trump protest of Trump's both terms, one of the biggest single-day protests possibly ever in American history. It was full of anti-Trump American flags. And this, to a great degree, flips the script, because what we saw Saturday was not some fringe resistance cell. It looked like the country. Middle-aged parents, veterans, grandparents, kids in strollers, waving the American flag and chanting "No Kings." And it is a very different image than what we have become accustomed to. And the reason that it's powerful is not just because it feels rebellious, it's because it feels normal and familiar. It was grounded in something bigger that we recognize, and that is where the real damage is done to this authoritarian movement. It really goes against the entire mythology of Trumpism, because when your authoritarian movement is out there parading tanks and drones through Washington, D.C., which we'll get to, while the other side is simply waving the flag of the United States, it makes the small crowd cheering the tanks, the squeaky tanks, look like the fringe. It makes that look like the threat, which of course it is. And all of a sudden, we had an environment Saturday where we have one guy hiding behind the military, screaming about traitors and enemies of the state. He looks less like a president and more like a dictator from some crappy, Netflix series or something like that. And it makes the No Kings protesters look like the patriotic ones, which is exactly what we need. Now, there's a lot of history wrapped up in this. You go back to the 1960s, protesters burned the flag, constitutionally protected, by the way. This is not a legal criticism. It's not a criticism at all. It's just saying this is how this has kind of shaken out over time. The protesters burning the flag in the 60s rejected what the United States had become and it was a symbolic destruction. It was sort of like a we're done with this country kind of message. The No Kings protests with the flags, even without the flags, we knew that this was the idea, but especially with the flags, it's, hey, we're not burning the flag, we're taking it back. What they were saying is, you don't get to use the flag as a weapon against us anymore. You don't get to brand fascism as patriotism. You don't get to claim this country as yours while you're actually tearing it apart. And this is potentially a game changer, because protest isn't just about who can shout the loudest. It's who can disrupt the narrative, shake up what people thought they knew. And that is what the American flags at the No Kings protests do. If you're sitting at home and you turn on whatever, and you see the protests and you see a flag, you see a sea of flags rather, and you hear the chants of No Kings, it doesn't trigger fear. It doesn't look like a rebellion. It just looks like, oh, these people are here for the country. And so that, in a sense, is bigger and more clever than the most clever signs I saw. And the signs I saw were very, very clever. And it leads us to sort of like the question at the end of the rainbow here. Who is really defending democracy? Who's standing up for American values? And what we saw Saturday was, it certainly wasn't Trump standing up for American values with squeaky tanks and sleepy looking acolytes standing and sitting alongside you. It wasn't the military parade. It wasn't any of that. It was the people who said, here's the American flag, no more kings, we're against Trump. So I don't want to overblow just the importance of the American flag, but because of all the context that it's gotten wrapped up into, certainly over the last 20 years since the Iraq War, probably even longer since Reagan started kind of weaponizing the flag, it was incredibly important. Now, there were some other flags anecdotally. I saw Mexican flags at the LA protests and, pride flags here and there. That's totally fine. But the presence and the prevalence of the American flag in sort of saying we're taking back this symbol, I think was absolutely critical. So I learned a while ago that I was clenching and grinding my teeth at night, not on purpose, not because I was necessarily stressed out by something obvious, but grinding and clenching without even knowing it. And when I talked to my dentist about it, about getting a night guard, it was a whole thing. Appointment, mold, waiting, a bill that seemed very high. And ultimately, I found Remy, and Remy is our sponsor today. Remy sends a kit right to your door to take an impression of your teeth with super clear step-by-step instructions. You send it back to them and they will custom make your night guard right here in the United States, in Las Vegas specifically. No waiting rooms, no overpriced bills, just a better way to protect your teeth while you sleep. Try Remy risk-free at shopremy.com/Pacman and use the code Pacman to get 50% off your night guard at checkout. The link is in the description.